need to address the issue of marks. In terms of mark allocation, the common assessment task is marked out of 100. Then in terms of time allocation, it is 2.5 hours. Now let's quickly go to the instructions and information. So the first thing which you need to bear in mind when you're answering this particular paper, you need to know the compulsory sections, and you also need to know the sections which are selective, which you can actually select what you have to answer. So the first thing, this question paper consists of 3 sections. So it's made up of 3 sections, which are section A, then we also have section B, and finally we have section C. So the questions in section A and section B are compulsory. So when it comes to section A and B, you do not have to elect, or you do not have to choose particular questions. You need to answer all questions in that particular section. But when you get to section C, choose only 2 questions in that particular section. Then you are reminded to read all questions carefully before attempting them. Then above all, you need to number the questions correctly according to the numbering system used in the question paper. Then you are also encouraged to write neatly and legibly. So let's move on to the first section. So this is a compulsory section, like I said before. So you are supposed to answer all questions in this particular section. Question 1. The instruction reads, various options have been provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the number and write only the letter A up to D next to the question number in the answer book, for example, 1.1.6 D. So our first question reads, a study skill where small pieces of information are broken down into small manageable sizes and linked in a more logical way. So we need to highlight our keywords which are going to guide our choice of answers there. So this is a study skill which where small pieces of information are broken down into small manageable sizes. So I'm going to highlight small manageable sizes in a more logical way, in a way which makes sense. So this can be done using a mind map. So this method of studying, it is called mind mapping, or you will be organizing your information in the form of a mind map. So that is the first question. So moving on to the next one, we also have 1.1.2, a condition that can be avoided by drinking water regularly during physical education activities. So during physical education activity, you can actually suffer from the following condition. You suffer from dehydration. If you don't take enough fluids, you might suffer from a condition called dehydration. So it is encouraged for you to take plenty of fluids before you engage in physical education activities. 1.3, unfair practice of giving jobs and favors to friends and associates rather than to the independent people who have the necessary skills and experience for jobs. So we also need to highlight our keywords so that we know exactly the answer which we are going to pick. So the unfair practice of giving jobs, so it includes giving jobs and favors to friends. So I'll take the word friends and associates at the expense of people who have necessary skills and experience for the job. So such type of a practice, it is known as cronyism. It is known as cronyism simply because friends and associates are known as cronies. So this practice is a type of fraud, or it's a type of corruption rather, which is known as cronyism. Then 1.1.4, the act that stipulates the working hours, overtime, annual leave, and remuneration of employees. So they are looking for an act or a law which stipulates the working hours. It also stipulates the overtime. It also determines the annual leave and also the remuneration, which is the payment of employees. It is known as the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. So our correct letter there would be the letter D. Moving on to 1.1.5, the lifestyle factor that is strongly linked to an increased risk of heart diseases. So we are going to look for an answer which is related to heart diseases. So heart diseases are clearly or are strongly linked to the smoking practice. So when you smoke, you expose yourself to a higher risk of attaining heart diseases, you end up acquiring diseases such as coronary heart disease and others. Now, let's move on to 1.2. So when we come to 1.2, the question requires us to give one word or term for each of the following descriptions. So write only the word or term next to the question numbers 1.2.1 to 1.2.4 in the answer book. 1.2.1, a document that affirms the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. So this particular document is known as the Bill of Rights. This particular document is known as the Bill of Rights. It is the document which affirms democratic values of human dignity. So it is the cornerstone of South Africa's democracy. It is known as the Bill of Rights. Then 1.2.2, the question reads, the level of government that makes bylaws. So our key term, I need to highlight the key term. I think you have local government. So municipalities or local governments are responsible for coming up with bylaws. So for 1.2.2, this is our correct answer is local government. This is local government. That is the government or the level of government which is responsible for that. That is local government. Then 1.2.3, a study skill where one uses rhythms, phrases, acronyms, or songs to help one to remember. So these are called mnemonic devices. They are called mnemonic devices, or you can call them mnemonics. These are called mnemonics, whereby you use a song or an acronym. For example, for those who do mathematics, they use the BODMAS rule to remember the correct way of calculating certain calculations. So this is called mnemonics. Then 1.2.4, an illegal act of secretly taking money that belongs to the organization or business which you work for. So this practice is also known as embezzlement. That is known as the embezzlement of funds. Embezzlement. That is the practice which involves secretly taking money that belongs to an organization or a business which you work for. 1.3, answer the following questions by writing the answer next to the question numbers, 1.3.1 to 1.3.3 in the answer book. Write your answers in full sentences. Differentiate between print media and electric media. So we need a difference. To differentiate is to show the difference or to distinguish between print media and electronic media. So print media essentially, print media is a form of printed communication. So print media is a form of printed communication. So I'm going to give examples, e.g., newspapers, magazines. Then we also have pamphlets. Newspapers, magazines, pamphlets, etc. So I'm not going to list the whole list, but it involves that. So print media is a form of printed communication, which includes newspapers, magazines, even books are a form of printed media. Then posters, leaflets, flyers, all those form part of print media. Now, moving on to the electronic part of the question. So electronic media, electronic media uses electronic devices. Devices to share information. So that is the major difference there. In terms of print media, this is printed communication, but electronic media, it uses electronic devices to share information. So I'm going to give you examples of electronic media. We have TVs, we have radios, we have the internet itself. So in other words, the question is asking, what are the limitations when you are sharing information with others? What are you restricted? What are the restrictions which govern the sharing of information with third parties? So two limitations to freedom of expression. Limitations to freedom of expression. So the first limitation which we are going to talk about, hate speech. So individuals are not allowed, you are not to send messages which incite violence. You are not allowed to send messages which incite violence or which cause harm to others. That is the first limitation which we have. You are not allowed to send messages which incite violence or which cause harm to others. In addition to that, defamation of character. Defamation of character is not allowed as well, as it hurts the reputation of a person. For example, spreading false rumors about a particular person, that is also prohibited. Then in addition to that, the use of obscene pictures, obscenity, and obscenity and pornography is not allowed to be posted or shared. So basically, those are the three limitations to freedom of expression. So this answers the question 3.2. State two limitations to the right of freedom of expression. So we have stated this is 3.2. Now moving on to the next question. The next question reads, discuss two dangers of abusing social media by young people. So it requires us to discuss the two dangers of abusing social media. What are the negative consequences of using social media by young people? So I'm going to move on to the whiteboard. Negative of abusing social media. That is basically what the question is asking about, or we can simply say the dangers of abusing social media. So the first danger, it leads to cyberbullying, abuse of social media. Abuse of social media leads to cyberbullying. As users may send hate messages to victim art, which causes serious psychological damage. This causes serious psychological damage to the victims. Okay, in addition to that, abuse of social media can also lead social media can lead to social media addiction. It can lead to social media addiction, whereby users find it difficult disconnect. They find it difficult to disconnect and end up not being productive. So the abuse of social media, it can lead to social media addiction, whereby people are always hooked onto their social media or their technological devices to the extent that they cannot disconnect and they cannot engage in productive activities. Then in addition to that, it leads to sedentary behavior, whereby young people become inactive. Resulting in lifestyle diseases. So the abuse of social media, it encourages sedentary behavior, which results also in some lifestyle diseases. Now, this is the answer for 3.3. Need to move on for 1.3.3, rather, 1.3.3. Moving on to the next question. The next question requires us to move. Actually, we are moving on to section B, which I said it's a compulsory section as well. So we have exhausted this one, the 2 dangers of social media by young people. So 1.4 requires us to read the source below and answer the questions that follow. Write your answers in full sentences. So we do have a case study which has been provided there. This is a case study on lung cancer. So lung cancer is a significant public health concern causing considerable number of deaths globally. It is a type of cancer that starts when abnormal cells grow in an uncontrolled way in the lungs. So 1.4.1, it says, define the term lifestyle disease. So lifestyle diseases are diseases caused by how people live. These are diseases which are caused by how people live. You can also say that these are diseases, lifestyle diseases, are primarily based on people's daily habits, what you do on a daily basis. Lifestyle diseases are primarily based on people's daily habits. So what you do on a daily basis, it actually affects you, and you end up having lifestyle diseases. Then the second question, 1.4.2, it says state 2 factors that contribute to lung cancer. The chief factor which contributes to lung cancer is smoking cigarettes, cigars. Then the second one is exposure to secondhand. Even though you are not a smoker, but if you are continuously exposed to secondhand smoke from active smokers. Exposure to secondhand smoke, that is a serious concern, exposure to secondhand smoke. Then you can also say family history of lung cancer. So if it runs in the family history of lung cancer, it can also be another factor. Then in addition to that, you can say exposure continuous exposure to harmful substances, harmful fumes, or chemicals. When you are subjected to harmful chemicals, you might end up getting lung cancer as well. Then moving on to the next one. So the next one is a compulsory section. This is section B, which is compulsory. You are required to answer all questions in that particular section. So for section B, I need to outline the important aspects of section B. So in section B, you are required to answer in full sentences. Answer in full sentences as far as possible. You are supposed to answer in full sentences as far as possible. Try to answer in full sentences. So you are supposed to be much more detailed. We need much more detailed answers. It's a little bit different from section A. So we do have section B, which reads, read the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Navigating social pressures. Social pressure, a potent force shaped by society's norms and expectations, significantly influences our behavior and our mental being. This external pressure, varying across life stages and cultural contexts, affects everything from personal relationships to career choices. The pressure to fit in can also lead to a conflict between the personal preferences and societal expectations, which may result in behaviors that may not align with personal values, causing internal conflict and stress. So this extract is adapted from lovediscovery.organization. All right. Now, the first thing it says 2.1. State 4 ways on how social pressure could be regarded as a stressor. So our keyword there we are going to highlight a stressor. So how can social pressure be regarded as a stressor for young people in their family relationship? So I'll start with the first. So social pressure could be regarded as a stressor since social groups, so in brackets, social groups, it includes friends, neighbors, classmates, schoolmates as well. So since social groups, friends, neighbors, classmates may pressurize these social groups may pressurize young people to. So I'm going to outline the ways, the various ways. So it may pressurize young people to disregard or challenge parental authority. First thing, to disregard or challenge parental authority, whereby young people would lose respect for their parents, to disregard or challenge parental authority. So this is the first way. Then secondly, social pressure can influence. Social pressure can force or it can influence young people to dress in an appropriate way to dress in an appropriate way. It can also influence young people to engage in antisocial behavior, such as criminal activity, and drug abuse. So it can influence young people to engage in criminal activities and drug abuse. In addition to that, social pressure can also to rebel against family religions and culture, whereby young people end up disregarding their religion, which they were brought up in, and also their cultural values which they were brought up in. So that's how it can be a stressor. In addition to that, young people they might interact with friends at the expense of their family members. So it might influence young people to interact with their friends at the expense of family members. Then in addition to that, social pressure can also result in conflict in the household. It can also result in conflict in the household. So in addition to that, we also need to look at the next question, which is 2.2. So 2.2 reads, explain how effective communication can build and sustain family relationships. So effective communication, how can it build and sustain family relationships? So our keyword here is build and sustain. We are looking at how it promotes good family relationships. So for this one, 2.2, I'm going to take it to the next page. That is for 2. I'm going to take it to the whiteboard. 2.2. Okay, when it comes to 2.2, all right, we start by saying effective communication. When people communicate effectively, effective communication can prevent conflict. Can prevent conflicts, can prevent conflicts and misunderstandings. It can actually prevent conflicts and misunderstandings from escalating resulting in more positive family interactions. Resulting in more positive family interactions. All right, 2.3. So still on the same question. The second point is that effective communication can also effective communication communication, effective communication enhances emotional connection amongst family members. It enhances emotional communication amongst family members. It creates a sense of unity. Unity among family members or amongst family members. All right, so I'm also going to add a bonus point, an extra point, which another alternative point which you can include for this particular response. In addition to that, it actually, effective communication strengthens parents to child relationships, which creates a safe and supportive environment where children feel valued and understood. So it creates a safe and supportive environment where children feel valued and understood. So those are the points which you can include for 2.2. The effects of effective communication in strengthening family relationships. Now, moving on to the next question, which is 2.3. Discuss 3 ways in which social pressure can affect young people's well-being. 3 ways in which social pressure can affect young people's well-being. So social pressure, that is 2.3. Social pressure can affect young people's well-being in the following ways. It can affect young people's well-being in the following ways. So the first way which we are going to discuss is social pressure encourages risky behavior, such as drug or alcohol abuse, which then leads to addiction and other health-related problems. So that is the first thing. Social pressure encourages risk behavior such as drug or alcohol abuse, which then leads to addiction and other health-related problems. In addition to this, you would find that social pressure from friends, from classmates may influence young people to engage in aggressive behavior. Can influence young people to engage in aggressive behavior, such as bullying and fighting. So it can influence young people to engage in bullying and also in fighting. Then it also encourages social pressure. Pressure may encourage the early onset of sexual activities. It can encourage the early onset of sexual activities by young people. Which exposes them, which puts them at risk of getting STIs, and unwanted pregnancy. STIs and unwanted pregnancy. So that is 2.3. That would be enough for 2.3. But as a bonus, you can also say that it increases stress and anxiety due to prolonged exposure to negative social pressure. It also creates self-doubt, lowered self-esteem, which may result in feelings of worthlessness and being powerless. So those are additional points which you can also include for that particular question. Now, moving on to the next question. The next question reads, recommend 3 strategies you would implement to cope with social pressure from your friends in a more responsible way. So we need 3 strategies which you can use to cope with social pressure. So we are also going to write it on the whiteboard. That is 2.4. All right, the first thing is that when you're subjected to social pressure, you need to choose. The first thing is choose. You need to choose your circle of friends or associates wisely. Must choose your friends or associates wisely. Don't just interact with people who may negatively impact you. So the first thing which we can say is surround yourself. Must surround yourself with people. Must surround yourself with people who share your own values. Must surround yourself with people who share your own values, who respect people, who respect your choices. You must surround yourself with people who respect your choices as well. That is another thing. Surround yourself with people who respect your choices and support your decisions. All right. So instead of surrounding yourself with people who might give you negative pressure, try to surround yourself with people who respect your decisions, who support your choices, who are positive. They also share your own values. That will help you a lot. Then moving on to the next one, the next bullet or the next point, which we might include under strategies as well. You need to set your own boundaries. You must set your own boundaries and clearly define clearly what you are and clearly define what you are comfortable with. Clearly define what you are comfortable with and clearly define to what you are comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with. Must clearly define what you are comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with and stick to it. So define your boundaries. Then you must learn to say no. You must also learn to say no without guilt. Learn to say no without guilt or reservations. So when you're influenced to do something which is bad, learn to say no without guilt or reservations. A no should be a firm no. Learn to say no without guilt or reservations. Then you also need to be confident. Be confident and stand with your decisions. When you make a decision, stand with it. You need to be confident and stand with your decision. So all these points which you can actually include for this particular one. So choose your circle of friends or associates wisely, then set your own boundaries, learn to say no without guilt. Then finally, be confident and stand with your decision. Then you must always constantly remind yourself of your personal values and goals. So those are additional points which you can also include for such a question. Now, this brings us to the end of question 2. We need to move to question 3. So question 3 requires us to read the extract which is provided. Then we answer the questions that follow. So it talks about the employment contract explanatory notes. It is important that the status of an employee be established from the beginning of the employment relationship. This is important. It is important that the status of an employee be established at the beginning of the employment relationship. Permanent, fixed, term, temporary, and so on. The Basic Conditions of Employment Act in Section 29 provides for certain written particulars of employment to be provided as the minimum, and every employer is legally obliged to provide all employees with these minimum particulars. Employers are well advised to enter into a written contract of employment with every employee. So the first question reads, define the term job contract. So basically, when you talk about a job contract, we are talking about a written agreement. Job contract refers to a written agreement. This is a written agreement between the worker and the employer. So this should be in black and white. It is a written agreement between the employer and the worker or the employee. So it is, you can also say this, these are legal written guidelines. You can also say written legal guidelines that promote a good working relationship. They promote a good working relationship between the employee and employer. So this is a written agreement between the worker and the employer. That is the first point, which you can include. That's the first definition which you can include. Then you can also say that it is these are written legal guidelines that determine the relationship between the employer and the employee. So whenever you start work, before you start work, actually, you must enter into a contract with an employer on the terms and the conditions which you are supposed to follow. All right, so the next question requires us to look at, explain 4 elements of a job contract, the elements which are supposed to be included in a job contract. Okay, so the question reads, state 4 elements of a job contract. So for this one, I'll take it to the whiteboard so that we can write it on the whiteboard. 4 core elements of a job contract. So when you look at a job contract, it should contain the following pieces of information. So let me write the subheading. 4 core elements of a job contract, 3.2 core elements. So these elements, you can say key features. These are the features, what is expected in a job contract. Of a job contract. So the first one, it should have names of contracted parties. So in this case, a job contract should include the employer and employee, the names of the employer and the names of the employee. In addition to that, there is need for a start date. When does the contract commence? When does it start? Then in addition to that, there is also the place of work. Then there's also the title of the job. What job does the worker title of job or job title? Title of job and job description. The title of job and the job description. Then in addition to that, there should be remuneration or agreed salary. Remuneration. You can call it the agreed salary or wage or pay rate. In addition to that, you should also include the termination and notice period. Termination of employment and notice period. The termination and notice period. Then in addition to that, we also need the disciplinary procedures in the event that the employee fails to do or to follow what is required, the disciplinary procedures. And grievance procedures as well. So basically, we have listed quite a number. Yes, so in your case, the question only requires 4 of them, so you can choose any 4 from the ones which have been provided. Now, moving on to 3.3, explain to workers' rights that employees must be aware of in order to maintain good working relationships. Let me read it again. Explain 2 rights of workers that employers must be aware of in order to promote good working relations. So for this one, this is 3.3. I would write it below 3.3. So the rights include workers, you have the right to, to work in a safe, they have a right to work in a safe environment, free from hazards and risks, free from hazards and risks that could endanger their life, health, or safety. In addition to that, you can also add that all right, they need to be treated, workers need to be treated fairly. Workers need to be treated fairly and not to be discriminated. And not to be discriminated based on gender, religion, or disability. So these are the 2 workers' rights that employees must be aware of. Then just in addition, for discussion's sake, all workers are entitled to be treated fairly by their colleagues or treated equally to their colleagues with dignity and with respect. Then a workplace should also be provided with adequate resources, appropriate resources, and equipment to enable the workers to carry out their duties efficiently. Then, in addition to that, you can also say that workers are entitled to join trade unions or to be part of the collective bargaining process. So all those are workers' rights which they are entitled to, and the employer should honor those particular rights. Now moving on to 3.2, 3.4 rather. 3.4 reads, 3.4 will be our next question, 3.4. 3.4, discuss how an employer could assist a young worker to minimize the consequences of not reading or misreading the job contract. So you find that job contracts are usually legal documents which young employees might not understand. So it is also the responsibility of the employer to make it easier for the young worker to understand the contract. So employers should allow young workers employers should allow young workers to read their contracts at home under favorable conditions so that they may not feel pressurized to sign them immediately, so that they won't feel pressurized to sign the contracts immediately under their watch. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that, or the second way of assisting young people is to have translators. Translators who interpret the contracts in an easier way. In an easier way to understand. Right. Contracts are usually documents which are complicated, which use legal language or legal jargon, which can be difficult to understand. So there must be translators who can interpret that particular legal language so that our young people would know exactly what they are signing up for. Now, 3.5, examine why it is important for a worker to review a job contract. In each answer also indicate how reviewing it may benefit the worker. So in this case, we need to provide detailed explanations. So I'm going to go to the whiteboard again. So the first point is that we need to say that it is important for a young worker to review a job contract because the working conditions may change the working conditions may change, or the job description may change. Therefore, the worker would need will need to be compensated accordingly. So in the workplace, working conditions can change, or even the job description can change. So the worker would need to be paid accordingly. Therefore, there is need to renegotiate the salary. There will be need to renegotiate the salary. There will be need to renegotiate the salary. So that is one thing. Now moving on to 3.5. 3.5 again. A worker still on the same question. All right. So the employer may have to amend. The employer may have to amend the job contract to accommodate grievances or omissions, to accommodate grievances or commissions, so these changes need to be put in writing. These changes need to be put in writing. These changes would need to be put in writing to ensure that the demands or changes are met, or changes are met. So this is the importance of reviewing a job contract. So this brings us to the end of question 3, which is the last question in section B. Now we need to move on to section C, which is the section where you are supposed to choose 2 questions. So under this section, there is an extract. The instruction first says answer 2 questions from this section. Then your responses must consist of paragraphs. Marks will only be allocated for responses written in full sentences. So this is of utmost importance. You must make sure that your answers are written in full sentences. That is of utmost importance. Then study the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Load shedding and stress related to inability to make it by the end of the year. As the academic year draws close, matric learners are under immense pressure to prepare for their final examinations. However, frequent load shedding has created additional challenges such as disrupted study routines, lack of access to electricity for lighting, and the inability to use electronic devices for learning. These disruptions cause or contribute to high levels of stress among our learners, many of whom fear they may not be adequately prepared to succeed. Load shedding negatively affects the education sector, amongst other sectors, and may have a permanent dent in the country's educational progress. The media has played a role in highlighting these challenges and raising awareness about the pressures faced by matric learners during this time. So this was adapted from www.sowetanlive.co.za. So write paragraphs on load shedding's contributions towards matric stress. Use the following as a guideline. Define the term media. State 3 roles that the media could play in raising awareness about study-related stress experienced by matriculants during load shedding. Then the second part, analyze how applying effective time management strategies could assist matriculants in making the most of study sessions, despite disruptions caused by load shedding. Then critically discuss how ongoing electricity disruptions can increase the stress levels of matric learners during their academic, affect their academic performance and mental well-being. So we'll start with the first bullet. The first bullet says, define the term media and state 3 roles of media that can be in raising awareness about study-related stress. So this is the first one. All right. So the definition of media, bullet number 1. Media refers to the different platforms that are used to communicate important information to the general public. So media refers to the different platforms that are used to communicate information to the general public. So the media could, the role played by media now, the media could expose and report the high levels. The media could expose and report the high levels of stress, like that article of stress experienced by matriculants due to load shedding. Due to load shedding. So that is the first thing which the media can do. Then the media can also review or expose the negative effects. The media can review the negative effects of high stress levels, the negative effects of high stress levels on students or on learners. Media can expose the high effects of the high stress levels on students, on their ability to study properly. Then in addition to that, then the media can also inform the general public, about can inform the general public about how load shedding can inform the general public about how load shedding affects different groups, especially matriculants. So they can inform how it affects the general groups, especially matriculants. So that is the first bullet. So this has been written in a paragraph, so you're also encouraged to write in a paragraph when you write these particular bullets. Now, moving on to the next question. Analyze how applying effective time management strategies could assist matriculants in making the most of their study section, despite disruptions caused by load shedding. So we need to look at how applying effective time management strategies. So this will be written on a blank on the whiteboard. So the first thing we need to say that effective time management strategies such as keeping track of load shedding, schedules in your area, in your surrounding areas, can be used. So the first point is that effective time management, such as keeping track of load shedding schedules in your area, it can be used. It's a strategy which can be used. So what is the effect of this strategy? This would enable matriculants to predict when load shedding will take place, then they will be able to predict when load shedding will take place so that they can design their study timetable around the load shedding schedule. So you can actually design your timetable in order to accommodate load shedding. So during times when there will be load shedding, you can actually rest during that time. Then when power comes back, that's when you can start studying. So that is the first strategy. Then, in addition to that, they can prioritize. Okay, matriculants can ensure that may try to ensure that they are organized and prepared for load shedding. You must ensure that they are prepared and organized for and prepared for load shedding. For load shedding, so that they ensure that they have sufficient supplies of candles, lanterns, torches within their reach. You must make sure that lanterns are within their reach so that they can continue studying, during load shedding. In that way, they may not be severely disturbed. They may not be severely disturbed. All right. So hiding, another point, hiding distractors such as cell phones, and staying away from television during from TV is a common practice during load shedding. It is a common practice during load shedding. This would minimize distractions and ensure matriculants are fully focused on their studies. So it minimizes distractions. It ensures that matriculants are fully focused on their studies. Then in addition to this, we would also say that you can declutter and organize your workspace. As a disorganized desk would be more difficult to navigate during load shedding, which would make studying far easier and more enjoyable during load shedding. That could enable them to persevere during their studies. So those are some of the points which you can include. Now let's move on to the next bullet. The next bullet, critically discuss how ongoing electricity disruptions can increase the stress levels of matric learners and affect their academic performance and mental well-being. So for this one, we are going back again to the whiteboard. Then we are going to write it on the whiteboard again. So load shedding could cause higher levels of traffic of traffic along routes to the examination venue since traffic lights will be off during power outages. Power outages. This would make it difficult for candidates arrive on time for the exam on time. This would make it difficult to arrive at the examination center on time, and they might be worried about not finishing on time. Not finishing on time. So this is the first thing. So load shedding will cause higher levels of traffic along routes to the examination venue. Since traffic lights will be off during power outages, this would make it difficult for candidates to arrive for the examination on time, and they might not be worried about not finishing on time. Then, in addition to that, load shedding can cause the matriculant's computer to turn off midway through the examination. Candidates may lose the work that they might not have saved. They might lose the work which they might not have saved, which then increases the possibility of submitting incomplete work. Therefore, increasing anxiety levels. Then load shedding can also occur can also occur. It can also take place. It can also occur during times when matriculants are supposed to study, during the time when matriculants are supposed to study. It can occur during the times when matriculants are supposed to study, which makes them much more anxious and uncertain about their performance. About their performance in exams, in examinations, which would also affect their performance in examination. So all these are points which you can include in answering the question. Critically discuss how ongoing electrical disruptions can cause stress levels of matric learners and affect their academic performance. Now, this brings us to the next question, which is question 5. So question 5 reads, read the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Human factors causing ill health. Stereotyping as a social factor. Stereotyping as a social factor may lead to social classification of others, which is one of the reasons for the them and us attitude that some people may have. Treating people in this way may eventually have negative impact on mental health of such victims. Stereotyping often involves judging people based on various factors without considering their individual qualities and characteristics. Adapted from simplypsychology.org. Write paragraphs on human factors causing ill health, social factors. Use the following as a guideline. Briefly state 4 possible social factors that can lead to stereotyping. So for this one, it is a brief outline of the factors. So gender imbalances. So the first one is gender imbalances can lead to stereotyping. Then, in addition to that, we can also say that ideas learned from other people, learned from other people from the community. The ideas that we learn from other people, it can be the community, it can be our upbringing, it also influences stereotypes. Then, in addition to that, we also have being influence of social expectations. Influence of social expectations. Then in addition to that, we can also say that not being open to different ways. There are some people who are not open to different ways. Not being open to different or new ways. When you close yourself to new things, not being open to different ways. So these are some of them, the possible social factors which can result, that can lead to stereotyping. So the second bullet, it reads, analyze 2 negative effects of a social factor, such as stereotyping on mental health. How does stereotyping affect mental health? So the first point we need to state is that victims of stereotyping develop a negative concept, they develop a negative self-esteem, causing them to have a negative view of themselves. They'll end up having a negative view of themselves. Then this will lead to irrational thinking. This will lead to irrational thinking. And creates a false sense of worthlessness. So it can actually affect people's self-esteem, and they'll end up having a negative sense of selflessness. Then in addition to that, victims stereotyping would result in a sense of distrust in all people, causing them to socially isolate themselves, which would make them, make them feel disconnected would make them feel disconnected to the rest of the society. This then results in extreme feelings of loneliness. So these are the negative effects of stereotyping. This is how stereotyping affects the mental well-being of victims. Now, the next question reads, critically discuss how a person could determine whether he or she may be unintentionally stereotyping. How do you as an individual determine whether you're stereotyping others, unintentionally stereotyping others? Let's go to the blank page, or let's go to the whiteboard. That's when we are going to whiteboard. All right, so the first point which I would want to state is that critically discuss how a person could determine. How do you determine as an individual? How do you determine whether they are unintentionally stereotyping? So the first key is the first key will be self-introspection. Self-introspection about the group activities. Starts with self-introspection about the group activities which you participate in. in while excluding others. So look at the group activities you participate in whilst excluding others. All right. Then look at how you disregard or ignore others for no apparent reason. How do you disregard or ignore others for no apparent reason? Then in addition to that, if you realize this, you might be stereotyping others. Others unintentionally. Then secondly, you need to examine your approach. Examine your general approach. Approached with others. Must examine your general approach with others. Ask them to assess your approach. Ask them to assess your general approach. So after doing this, this can confirm your narrow-minded attitude towards others, and this could be an indication to biasness or prejudice. So examine your general approach. How do you interact with others? How do you deal with individuals or with other individual groups? Then you must also ask others to assess you. How do you deal with other groups as well? They can do their own assessment, then they give you feedback. So after looking at such things, you can find out if you are stereotyping others or not. So that is the last bullet in question 5. Now let's move on to question 6. Question 6. So question 6 reads, study the image below and answer the questions that follow. How to use social media for environmental advocacy. Write paragraphs on the use of social media to save the environment. You're supposed to write paragraphs on how to use social media to save the environment. So the first thing which we are required to do is to provide a definition of the term social media. A definition of the term social media. So social media refers, so we start by looking at the image. I think we do have an image of a particular social media platform. How to use social media for environmental advocacy. We do have, yes, a cell phone device. Then we have the environment or the natural environment in the background. Then our question reads, define the term social media and provide 3 ways in which the youth could responsibly use social media when promoting safe and healthy living. So we'll start by a definition of social media. Social media is a medium that allows videos, pictures, and sounds to be shared to the public via the internet. Public via the internet. So they allow this to be shared to the public through the internet. So secondly, you can also say that it is an electronic way for the public to update each other about their daily activities, important moments via posts, feeds, and stories. So you can also say that these are online tools that allow individuals to show appreciation for another's views, information, videos, pictures through likes. So that is the definition of what of social media. Now the second bullet requires us to, or the second part of the question requires us to, three ways in which the youth could actually three ways in which the youth could make use of social media when promoting healthy and safe living. So we are saying that the second part of the question, it reads, three ways in which the youth could responsibly make use of social media platforms when promoting safe and healthy living. So the first thing is that they need to respect the rights of others. Respect the rights of others. The rights of others. So that is a safe way. Respect the rights of others. Then in addition to that, avoid hate speech or slander. They should avoid using hate speech. Then in addition to that, they should keep their private settings setting up to date. Then in addition to that, they should also consider before posting. Before you post anything, consider it before posting. So these are the ways in which the youth can use social media platforms for promoting safe and healthy living. Now, the next question says, analyze two ways in which impact studies would be used to determine the effectiveness of an effort by the youth. Impact studies, how can they be used to determine the effectiveness of an effort by the youth to use social media? So the first thing which we need to discuss is that impact studies help identify the interventions and impact studies help identify the interventions and so impact studies help identify the intervention and also assesses the effectiveness of the strategies. Using algorithms which would then make interventions more effective. This would make interventions more effective. As a result, Energy would not be wasted, won't be wasted on futile or on unproductive efforts, on futile efforts. So that's the first part. Then the second part, social media or impact studies, they can use investigation whether to investigate whether or not social media assists whether or not social media assists in driving the message across, whether or not social media assists in getting the message across. So since this can be done, since polls and surveys can provide such information. So this information can be provided through surveys, can provide such information. Polls and survey can provide such information. So the youth can use such to consider whether their efforts are valuable or they are in vain. So they can use investigation whether to or not social media is driving the message across. Since polls and surveys can provide such information, the youth can use such information to consider whether their efforts are really paying off or whether they are in vain. So the next part of the question, critically discuss how the consequences of an unhealthy environment could make it difficult for the youth to achieve academic success. So we can actually say that the first point is that illegal dumping sites around schools would attract rodents, which could lead to disease outbreaks, affecting learners who fall sick and miss school. Rodents can also disturb studies. Rodents, by rodents, we are referring to rats or mice. Rodents can also disturb learner studies Rodents can also disturb learners studying as they are studying. They might be running across rooms, which would actually disrupt lessons, and it would also disrupt our studies. In addition to that, we can also say that dams, rivers, bodies of water may become blocked by litter and start to flood areas that learners must use to travel, which could make it difficult or dangerous for learners to get to school or cross the river in order to get to the school, which could eventually contribute them losing valuable school lessons on that specific day. Then also, we also have harmful substances from damaged factories, which may be released to the environment, since contaminants may be inhaled by unsuspecting learners, which could then make them sick for many days, resulting in them falling sick or unable to concentrate in class, for example. Then also glass might, if the illegal dumping of glass in dangerous area, it might actually injure the learners, such that they might end up getting injured, and they might also skip school, losing valuable contact time with teachers, and that would also impact on their academic performance. So this brings us to the end of this particular session. We wish you the best of luck in the upcoming examination. Go and do well. Just remember the key basics. You must make sure that you answer all questions in section A. Then you are supposed to answer all questions in section B. Then in section C, you have the option of answering 2